Hello, everybody, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. That's how to get hired, by the way, not how to get hired. Hired is when you get pissed off, right? Anyway, this is my weekly Q&A. So if you have any questions about resumes, job interviews, job applications, networking, recruiters, hiring managers, discovery of jobs, job aggregators like Indeed, other alternative ways of getting a job, the hidden job market, anything related to careers and employment, you're come to the right place. And I will do my best to answer any questions you might have. So get in the chat and ask them. And while we're waiting for the questions to roll in, first of all, thank you once again to Monologue for joining my channel as a member. That's awesome. And where's the little thing there? Right here. Right there. Join my channel. You get access to member-only videos and stuff like that. And if you haven't checked it out yet, this is the latest regular video on my channel. So go to check that out. I've been doing a series where I give out sample answers. Instead of sort of the methodology to answer, just going to give out sample answers. Not that you would necessarily want to memorize it and repeat it, but it gives you an idea of what an answer might actually sound like or look like when you are in a job interview. So that's the latest in that series. And as a reminder, while we're waiting for the questions to roll on in, I have a course called Get Hired, which is basically my entire methodology and recommendations for how to get hired from beginning to end, step 1 to step X in easy stages, one at a time, and it goes through multiple methods of getting a job, including what I call the standard channels, which is finding job postings online, applying to them with a job application and a resume attached, and then going to a job interview with a recruiter and getting a job offer and doing that route. It also covers things like networking, how to discover all the other jobs out there that are actually not posted, that usually get filled before they need to be posted, how to put yourself forward for those and discover some really great jobs and solve a lot of problems that a lot of people encounter when they're doing things like changing careers or they're coming off a very long work gap. Things like this, a lot of entire kaleidoscope of issues, how to solve those problems and how to do networking and do it in a way that's friendly for introverts. You don't have to go out and schmooze with people, but you do get the end result. So if that's what you're interested in, check that out. And we have some questions. People are in the chat, so that's great. Welcome to everybody who's here. Julien says, hello, Bill. Hello, Julian Alice. I never did find out if it's Julien Alice or Julian Alice. Let me know, since I've seen you more than once in these live streams. Let me know just if I'm pronouncing that right. Let's call it the English way or the French way. And SP is here. SP says, done many roles within the sales role as it was an apprenticeship, IT, supply chain, and sales. But most of these tech government companies want MOD experience, for example. Okay, so you're going to have to break out acronyms for me. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say that means Ministry of Defense, but I don't know. Don't use acronyms in a general conversation that isn't shop talk, just as a general rule to people. People often throw acronyms at me expecting that I just know what they're talking about, and I don't. Especially if you're not in the same industry as somebody else. But okay, that makes sense, SP. If there's a question at the end of it, let me know. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, I will just mention my other course that's there, which is called the $100 MBA. And this is a course for people who want to learn business. Why would you take this? Well, if you're someone who has always been interested in business, this is the course for you. Maybe you don't want to spend 5 figures on going and taking a MBA, a Master's of Business Administration. This is possibly a substitute for you. It's a lot cheaper. The catch is that it's self-study, and there are no tests, no evaluations. So what this means is that it's unaccredited because I have no way of knowing what you got out of it. There's no tests, no evaluations. But I did it intentionally in this format because it's not about learning the program for somebody else. It's about learning what you're interested in. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, or you want to have an awareness of business that will further your conventional career, this may be something that's practical and easy and cheap enough that it might make sense for you. It also is a good preview if you are thinking of taking a brick and mortar MBA. You're going to drop 5 figures, you're going to go to university for a couple of years, you're going to take a master's of business administration, but you want to know what you're getting into. Maybe you don't know a lot of exactly what you cover and how you cover it. This can give you a preview into what that program looks like. You learn everything you would learn in a regular master's of business administration degree that you would take in university. And the reason that's true is because you're not getting all the information from me, you're getting it from the types of textbooks that people use in some of the most prominent masters of business administration degrees in the world. Okay, there is people that have written books that they use in Harvard and their MBA program and stuff like this. You're using the same books. So it's a guide through all that material, and I am the person who takes you on that tour, and you can go as deep into the material as you want. You can read it on your own terms, on your own schedule, at the pace you want, and you can go as in-depth as you want, or if you just want to skim it, that's fine too. It's whatever you want to get out of it. I basically lay it all out, and then you can choose what you do with it. That's a program. If you are interested, it is a solution for some people. Check out the link in the description and learn more. Excellent. So Julien says, I love the way you say it, so don't worry about it. Okay, hey, it's all good. It's all good. That's right. I can put a French accent on it, and I can put an English accent on it. I can't put a Spanish accent or any other accent on it, at least not that I'd be brave enough to attempt live, unrehearsed. I'm going to adjust the brightness of my camera here. There we go. Doesn't sear everyone's retinas for being so blindingly white. Courtney 2. What happened to Courtney 1? Courtney 2 says, context, I applied for a leadership position in a private equity, okay? You mean like a private equity firm? However, during my first interview with the executive recruiter, he said, go to next comment. Well, while we're waiting for the exciting conclusion of that. Yeah, remember, earlier this morning, I did another live stream, and I was about polls, and someone also mentioned, I think a different person mentioned that they were applying for a job in a private equity firm, but their written language was very poor grammatically. It was very hard to understand what they were saying. So I always got the impression that private equity firms, if you're working in private equity, that's where it's like high level banking essentially, and a little bit more, in depth. That's where a high level of language and great communication skills, great written communication skills really matter. So, I'm surprised that people making all this mistakes, and then they say I'm in private equity. So, okay. So anyway, to resume, Courtney 2 here. During my first interview with the executive recruiter, he said, when I look at your profile, there are certain things of your profile that are interesting, also your international dimensions. Okay. I know your manage projects. I guess I know you manage projects, but at the same time, your CV is weak. Bill, how can I answer this objection? I really want this job. Well, it's not really an objection. It's just a sort of general insult and put down, like saying, oh, it's weak. Yeah, this is something that it's a tactic that a lot of recruiters do. I find it's a very cheap amateur tactic, where what they'll do is they'll receive your job application. Okay. Based on the strength of your application, they'll invite you in for an interview. Okay. Now, I don't know what the ratios are, but it's something like you're in the top at least 10% of the applications they received. If they call you in for an interview, usually they're selecting from approximately, around 100 applicants and are calling in, say, 10 or less for interviews. Okay, so already you're in the top 10%. Then when you get to the interview, they make these sort of borderline insulting, borderline idiotic statements like, oh, your CV is weak. Well, obviously that doesn't make any sense, because if my CV was weak, why did you select me for an interview and not the 90% of other people that applied? Okay? So it's an incorrect statement. If it is correct, it demonstrates that they don't have a clue what they're doing if they're inviting the person with the weak CV in, right? So we can go on the statement that, like, they know that's incorrect. It's a deliberate lie. What's the motivation? Sometimes the motivation is to get a rise out of you, to see how you would handle being told something like that, something borderline rude and abrupt. Are you the kind of person that has the diplomatic skills to be able to smooth it over and just, not have it turn into an awkward situation? Or is that too challenging for you to handle? Okay, so sometimes that's the motivation, when there is an actual motivation and it isn't just a recruiter being a natural idiot. That can be the motivation. The other reason why they may ask that question is because it's sort of a very unsophisticated cue for you now to defend your work history and show how you're a fit for a job. So it translates to, why should I hire you? What makes you think you're qualified for the job? It's another version of that question. Okay? So the answer to that question is, if they say, why should I hire you? Or what makes you think you're qualified? That's your cue to sort of speak to the things that they have told you that are requirements for the role. Okay? So if they've posted in, say, the job posting, they've said, we're looking for a person who has these 10 things. They've got this degree. They've got this experience. They've got these skills. They've got this personality type. Okay? If they've indicated stuff like that in writing, you could start speaking to those. If there's additional things that they've signaled explicitly or implicitly that's beyond the job posting that they've said in interviews and things, we're looking for somebody who's more of an expertise in this kind of area, something like that. You can add that to the list of requirements that they're looking for. So this is your cue to say, if they say, oh, well, your CV looks weak, and you could say, well, I really don't feel it's weak. As I understand it, you're looking for somebody who, had 2 years experience in this, as stated in the job posting. And I mean, I have 5 years experience in that. I also understand you're looking for somebody who's got, a degree in this. I have a degree with that. I actually was, towards the top of my class, or, whatever. Or I have that degree and then some. I've got this other degree also that really enhances that knowledge. And so on and so forth. You speak to the requirements. So it's almost like a very unsophisticated way of throwing out a challenge and having you sort of defend it. Okay. So that's something that presumably you will have rehearsed. Okay. The question, why should we hire you? Why do you think you're qualified? Why do you want to work here? Like it's all the same question, where you give like a hard-hitting summary of, like, I got this, I got that, I got this, I have these skills, I have that qualification, I have that education, I have a burning desire to do this, as evidenced by my track record. And for those reasons, I think it certainly seems by what you've told me that I would be a great fit. Something like that, right? So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's always annoying dealing with recruiters that can't conduct themselves professionally. Just so we're all clear, telling somebody like, your resume is weak, or, you seem unqualified. These are unprofessional things to say. I know they get said a lot during job interviews. It's becoming the sort of new culture of recruitment and selection to give these blunt, borderline rude statements that you then have to sort of react to. It's unfortunate, because that's usually not how we deal with people. You wouldn't ever do that, say, like in a sales call or anything like that, So, but for some reason in HR, they think it's okay to talk to job applicants like that. That's the level of respect that they have, where they think that that's okay. But that's what I think is going on there. WCK Champion is back. Hi, Bill. I'm going to have a second interview in French. Any advice, please? Well, you could always twirl your mustache. That's what I would do. Always remember to go ho, 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 ho at the end of every sentence. And, blah, blah, blah. I could make a bunch of jokes, but what's there to say, really? Hopefully your French skills are adequate. I don't know what your background is. I don't know what your level of language is, or if you're bilingual, or if that's your first, I assume that's your second language. What can help is leading up to the interview. I don't know when this interview is happening, if you have a few days, but, if it's possible to watch the equivalent of French TV, I don't know, could you go to YouTube in French and just watch a whole bunch of videos and just brush up on your language skills? What I know for, like I'm bilingual, and what I know for speaking French is that just because you've spoken it in one context, like, for example, I went to high school, like everything was in French, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can hold a business conversation in French, or any insert name of industry conversation in French, because you don't know the lingo in French, or you may not. So that's a challenge that I've come across. So if you go and you watch like a bunch of French business videos or something like that, maybe that could help. That might be something that might add value depending on your situation. That's all I can say at this point. SP, what's your take on initial screening calls? Is a screening call done after a CV has been checked by the hiring manager, or has the hiring manager not seen the CV yet? Well, the thing about recruitment and selection, like a lot of areas of business, a lot of organizations famously don't have their act together. And when it comes to recruitment and selection, you're dealing with people outside the company that may not even work there. Most of them won't end up working there. So you can get away with some very incompetent and unprofessional behavior, and no one will ever know. So that's what they tend to do. Now, the way it's supposed to work is that, after you look at, you filter resumes, then you would do a screening call. Okay. So you get your initial pile of applications. They get filtered out directly, like people that clearly don't have the educational qualifications or whatever. They would get filtered out in sort of that first round. Then if you're doing a screening call, you would then do the screening call. So that subset of the applicants that passed the resume filter, you would then subject them to the screening call filter, right? And you would ask some basic questions on the screening call. That's how it's supposed to work. But in the real world, we see all kinds of interesting things going on. So that's usually how it goes. Now, the resume at that point, usually, okay, all kinds of things happen, but usually the resume originally will be filtered out by a recruiter, or it may just go to applicant tracking software. It's done by software, so a human hasn't even seen it yet. It does the initial filter. Usually the hiring manager doesn't do the initial filtering. When it goes to the screening call stage, usually that's a recruiter. Okay, it's not a hiring manager; it's a recruiter. Okay, so when you get the screening call, all things being equal, the odds are that your resume has not been seen by a hiring manager, and the person talking to you on the phone is also not a hiring manager. Hiring managers come in later. Recruiters filter applicants first, then it goes to hiring managers. That's generally how it works. There are exceptions to this. If you're applying to a small company, if they're posting the job and doing this whole thing themselves, then there are exceptions. But usually that's what we see. Thank you, SP. That's very nice of you. And you're awesome too. Raphael, greetings, Bill. Nice to be here again. learning guidelines in trends, careers as well, recommendations about how to face interviews, I guess, and so on. My question is still a good idea to become an IT pro? I can't answer that for you, Raphael. I mean, that's up to you. What you choose to do is up to you. For some people, it's a no-brainer. That's what you should be doing. For other people, it may not be. It depends entirely on you. It's not like a thing independent of who you are. Okay. One element of that is that, like, if what you're asking is the industry growing, and is there going to be demand growing for people in that role? You can get that on the internet very simply, and that varies by region and by industry, because IT is not one thing. It's many, many different sort of sub-industries, right? So you can easily look that up depending on what region you are, of what country you're in. You can easily look that up, okay, for like demand forecasting. The other aspect of it, like the economy, you can look that up too, okay? Certain areas of IT are expected to grow. It's been on a growth sort of thing for 30 years, 40 years. Like it's sort of an upward trend for growth. However, does that necessarily mean that, an IT professional will make a lot of money and have a good, secure job? Not necessarily, okay? Just because there's demand for the industry doesn't mean that translates into like there'll be lots of really cool, really plentiful, really rewarding jobs. That doesn't necessarily work out like that. The other element is more of a personal element. The world always has room for great people. Okay, if you're a great IT professional, like you are awesome at what you do, there's always room for you. If you are mediocre at being an IT professional, even in periods where the economy is booming and there's high demand, it still may not be the thing for you to do. Okay, it still may not lead to great, rewarding opportunities. So there's many, many factors there. You have to start separating them out. Okay. And that depends on your personality. People make decisions in different ways. I'm a very methodical decision maker. I try and separate out as many factors as I can and consider them in isolation as much as possible. For something this complex. Others use different approaches, and that's fine. But these are some of the dimensions to the problem. Okay, so I would explore that and see how you feel and get some information on all of these. Because it's a big decision. You want to make the right decision. Okay, it's worth putting some thought and some research into answering questions like this, because they're very, it makes a huge impact on your life. Julia, is it okay to apply to the same company you received a rejection from a year ago? Is it okay? Yes. Is it going to be a likelihood of success? No. Usually when they reject a candidate, they reject you for good. But there are exceptions to that. So, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it. It's not a taboo if you have applied for something and then be rejected and then you apply for a different job. Even the same job, like a year later or something, it's okay. There's no problem with doing it. But I would say, I would suspect that your odds, say your odds of getting any job are like a certain amount, the odds of getting that job are lower because they've already sort of rejected you. You've already got a glimpse into what their thoughts about you are. You know what I mean? And let's be very clear what I'm saying here. It's not a statement about your value or your ability or anything like that. It's what they feel they're looking for, right? Okay, a lot of jobs, not all, but a lot of jobs, a big factor is who you are as a person, your personality type, your communication style, your values and culture that you've acquired so far. They decide, does that kind of jive with what we're looking for, right? Now, that's as much dependent on them as it is on you, okay? Whether it jives with what they're looking for, that's got much more to do with what they're looking for than anything you have, right? Also, they may not really be able to assess what you have properly. They go off assumptions and first impressions and things like this, okay? So all you can say is that someone at that company has said in the past that you don't really jive with the type of thing we're looking for. And that's probably based on our assumptions of who you are, okay? Or our first impressions of who you are, okay? So go ahead. If it's something you want, go ahead. At the end of the day, just do it. If it's not a lot of trouble, go ahead. But like anything, go ahead, apply, and then move on. And then focus on the next opportunities. You know, never be looking back. Always be looking forward in this process. You know, that's how you do it. Okay? I mean, a lot of recruiters don't have a clue how to assess the abilities or suitability of a candidate. They don't. Okay? This is well known. And you don't need me to tell you this. A lot of you guys have personal experiences that tend to confirm that. I know that. Everybody can see this a mile away. You know, these people, they don't really know how to assess somebody. And we also know, we have data on the fact that job interviews are extremely poor at being able to select the correct employee. You know, so on top of it, it's a flawed process. Excuse me. Okay. So if it's not too much trouble and you want the job, go for it. And then move on. SP, the screening call is wath a big business. Sorry, don't know what you mean. You got to clean up your language. John Miller, do you think it's okay to contact CEOs for a job? Is it okay to contact CEOs? Yes. Is it okay to contact CEOs for a job? No. And when I say is it okay, it's not okay. What I mean is that you can, but it's highly unlikely it'll get you anywhere. I've gone into this extensively on my channel. It's not something I can explain in 30 seconds, but bottom line is that networking is a great way to get a job. Networking with CEOs is an awesome way to get a job that anybody can do. I don't care if you're a student. I don't care if you're entry level, you know, worker level, entry level, minimum wage person. I don't care. I'm talking to you. This is a great way to get a job, contacting a CEO. I'm a former CEO. There's no magic to being a CEO. These people aren't untouchable. They're not celebrities. Excuse me. It's hard to concentrate when, you know, you're trying to hold in a cough for like a minute. But no, I meant everything I said there. It's a great way to get a job, okay? It can open up a lot of doors for you. It's great because who are you competing with? How many other people are doing this? Zero. So you elevate yourself above the crowd of people, but you're the only one that did this. Now there's a catch to it. The catch is that you got to know some protocol. You got to know how to approach people. You got to know what to say. If you approach a CEO and say, "I'd like a job. Can you get me a job at your company?" That's useless. That will not get you anywhere. Okay. CEOs do not respond to that. CEOs will get upset with that. It's like, why the hell are you talking to me? Obviously, I'm not the person to talk to go for a job. Talk to HR, talk to a recruiter. You know, you're wasting my time. That's going to be the reaction from most people, right? It's like you might live in a house or an apartment, okay? And someone knocks on the door and says, you know, I sell industrial supplies to farms, including silos, tractors, irrigation systems. How many can I put you down for? What's your reaction going to be? Your reaction is going to be like, what the hell are you talking to me for? Obviously, I don't buy that stuff. Hello, I'm in an apartment here. I'm not on a farm, you know? So if someone said, should I knock on doors in an apartment complex to sell my farm equipment? You know, the answer is no, okay? Should I ask a CEO for a job? No. That's not the person you go to. It's inaccurate. It's inappropriate. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just you're making the request of the wrong person. However, if you were to contact the CEO and you don't mention jobs, I'm not here because I want a job, okay? I'm here because I think your company is awesome. I think you're an expert on your industry, and I would love to learn more about that industry, and I would love to listen to what you have to say. I would love to get your expert opinion on, say, your industry. If you could spare me a half an hour, I would really consider it an honor. Something like that. Most people will say, sure, yeah, that's quite flattering actually, and I like your attitude, Sure, I can give you half an hour of my time. You're not asking for anything, you're not trying to sell anything. You're showing your passion for something that this person does, and you are saying nice things about them. And I just want to hear you. I'd love to be able to ask you a couple of questions about this industry that you're in, because I think if anyone knows this stuff, it'll be you. Would that be okay? They will respond generally very well to that kind of request. Okay. So that gets you to the point where you can have an informational interview with the CEO. Okay. Incidentally, I've done all this. I built my consulting business by doing precisely this, doing informational interviews with CEOs of other companies in my city that I didn't know. Just doing requests, so like discovering them over the internet, doing requests, contacting them over LinkedIn, and setting up informational interviews. Okay. I wasn't asking. I wasn't like, give me a job or anything, but I was just like, I'd love to get your opinion on something. Would that be okay? Now, if you approach them professionally, you don't approach them like some kind of dumbass. You approach them like, this is a serious professional request. There's nothing weird or fishy about it. I'm not trying to sell you anything. What I mean is what I say, and there's no reason to suspect otherwise. It can be done. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that I go into in where is it? In that course, the Get Hired course. That's a part of the Get Hired course. Okay, how to do this. I've taught classes on this in university, and I've had students go out and do this and get like informational interviews and selfies with CEOs for a bonus. The last time we did this, I told the students, if you get a selfie with the CEO when you do your informational interview, I'll give you a extra mark or whatever. And a lot of them did. Yeah, it's totally possible to do. Now, if you go in there and the CEO loves your attitude, they say like, wow, that's some really interesting questions you're asking me, like the really great questions. And, I've enjoyed interacting with you. You're very easy to talk to. And, you're very interested in this. And I think that's great. That can turn into something later. Okay. You go away a couple of weeks, you come back, I was thinking about something you said, Mr. CEO or Madam CEO. Just if ever you're looking for someone who can do this, let me know, because, that's interesting. Stuff that can turn into stuff afterwards. If you're a professional in whatever industry, this is totally a thing to do. This is how you get access to a lot of jobs that aren't posted. Yeah. Anyway, I could go on forever about this. It's a great topic. Toonstruck says, after being hired, when is the earliest time you can ask for a raise? You can ask for a raise the next day if you want. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from asking. It's a question of what the circumstances are and why should they give you a raise. Like, I'm very, I don't know. I mean, I'm a private sector guy. The attitude of companies is like, why would I pay you more if you're already here, you're already doing the work, and you're not going anywhere, and you're a good employee? Like why would I pay you more if I don't have to? I mean, when you go to the grocery store and you buy, I don't know, food, you buy like a carton of milk or something, and you get to it has a price tag on it that says $2 or something, and you go to the checkout, and the checkout clerk says to you, yeah, it's $2, but actually, the price has gone up. It's now $4. So I'll just put you down for $4, okay? It's like, how would you feel about that? You're like, no, it's $2. I have always paid $2. It said it was $2. Why is it all of a sudden $4? I don't want to just pay more for the same thing if I don't have to, right? So that's kind of the obvious question. And also working against you is the fact that employers generally, they are used to this. Every employee feels that they deserve more money. Without exception, everyone feels that they are underpaid and they deserve more. It doesn't matter how much you make. You always feel that you deserve more. This is what has been shown in research, obviously, too. We have a lot of data on this. Everybody feels that they're more valuable than they are. Everybody feels that they deserve more money than they get. So knowing this, it results in everybody wanting more money. And even if you are okay with raising the pay, if you're okay with that idea, and a lot of times you can't. It's not a matter of you don't want to, it's a matter of you can't. A lot of supervisors or managers will want their direct reports to be paid more because I want to get even more work out of them. I want them to be more dedicated. I want them to be more happy here. I want them to care more about the instructions I give them. So I want them to be paid more, but not everybody has the ability to do that. They don't just give us extra budget to just pay people more when we don't have to. So I'm coming from that sort of mentality, and I find that asking for a raise is usually pretty ineffective unless there's an actual real reason to pay you more. If you have a competing job offer, if you said like, look, I've just received this job offer, I'm not going to tell you who it's from. All you need to know is that they are paying me, they're offering me X, which is more than I'm making here. Can you match it? Okay. If you can't match it, then it looks like I'm going to have to take this. Right? So that's a way of asking for a raise. And even then, a lot of employers will say, no, I don't believe you. I'm sorry, we're not just raising your compensation because you ask. You know what I'm saying? What I have seen many times is that they will let the employee actually leave and then call them a day later and say, come on back. Okay, fine. We'll match it. That kind of thing. So you can do whatever you want, but that's my attitude for it. It's like, if you're going to ask for it, actually have a reason in there that's very compelling. Okay. Not just another version of, I think I deserve more money. Okay. Because they hear that on a regular basis from everybody. And the supervisors and the managers, they go to their bosses and say the same thing. You know how I made the numbers every quarter last year, right? Well, for that, I think I deserve more money, And then the boss tells them, well, I would if I could, but making the numbers is your job, so sorry. And I wish I could, but then if I give you a raise, I got to give everybody a raise, and so that it's fair, and then we can't afford that, so sorry. Anyway, how's that for a long-winded, rambling trip to nowhere? It doesn't hurt to ask, but I think it would carry much more weight if you had a reason behind it other than I just want more money. Courtney 2 says advice is on this. Advice is on what? The last question I had from you, Courtney 2, was the whole your CV is weak thing, and I already answered that. So was there another question? Julien Alice says, would it be a good idea if I asked the other person on the informational interview about volunteering opportunities in their workplace? Well, it can be, but here's the thing. Usually, depending on what country you're in, a common thing is that there's some very clear laws about what jobs you can volunteer for. Volunteer means that, at least in the sense that I'm taking it in your question, is that you're working for free, right? Like you volunteer. I'm going to do this work for free. You don't have to pay me. Or you pay me well below minimum wage, right? the way this works is that if there weren't any laws about volunteering, every company could post positions and say, this is a volunteer position. I mean, you get good experience, right? But we don't pay anything, right? They would love to be able to do that. But it doesn't make sense to have things like minimum wages, but then have no restrictions on volunteering, because volunteering is essentially working for free. So usually the way it works is that you're only allowed to have volunteer positions for charitable type work and, maybe some stuff for the government, like a few isolated areas, right? So if they're in an industry that, clearly, no volunteering is allowed by law of the land, by the employment standards or the labor laws, it doesn't make any sense to ask about volunteering opportunities, because you can do like a 20-second Google search and discover that, no, you can't do volunteering in that industry. Unless that company is doing a charity drive and, collecting, donations for like a soup kitchen or, something like that, right? Which may not be what you're necessarily wanting to do if you're going for industry experience. So I would just look into that first. There's no harm in asking, but generally, sometimes you might encounter somebody who says like, why are you asking? I mean, it should be pretty obvious that you can't volunteer, for this type of work. Hopefully that makes sense. SP. So I had a screening call with an external agency working on behalf of the company and asked questions, etc. I guess my CV hasn't been seen then. Oh, the screening call thing. Look, as I said, I wouldn't set your watch to any of this. What I'm saying is what usually happens, but different companies may do different things. Usually, if you get the screening call, your resume hasn't been seen by a hiring manager. Okay, you asked me about hiring managers specifically. A recruiter could well have seen your resume. In fact, if a recruiter is calling you to do a screening interview, I would suspect that the recruiter has seen your resume. They've read it, okay? Or at least they've glanced at it, put it that way, okay? But it's not a sure thing that a hiring manager has seen your resume yet. Usually, if you pass the screening call, then it moves on to the stage where they get hiring managers involved. Okay? You are now a serious candidate, and that's when they get the hiring manager involved, and they say, here are some of the options, and we'd like you to meet each of these people to tell us what you think. Because ultimately, the hiring manager decides who gets hired. Yes, they're the recruiter. Courtney, too, I don't understand what you're saying. I answered your question in depth back earlier. If I misunderstood what your question was, please rephrase. But I did spend like 5 minutes or something answering that. SP, I have a really interesting question. Does age matter when applying? Well, without me knowing the context at all, yes, it does. Of course it does. How many 18-year-old CEOs of Fortune 500 companies do you see? Not many. Right? I mean, yes, age does matter. Right? I don't know what context you're asking. Like, if this is going in the direction of age discrimination and stuff, I mean, obviously that answer is going to be qualified, right? Once one knows the context in which you're asking it. Brad Bell says, great analogy. Alphonse, who's Bob? Hopefully you're not talking to me. I'm not Bob. I'm Bill. Or Alphonse says, I have been invited for a third and final interview for a director position. Any ideas? No? What? Like, do you have a question specifically? Director of what? What industry are you in? How many years of experience are you in? What? You know what I mean? Like I can't answer something with absolutely no context. It depends what they're looking for. I mean, when you get to the director level, it's highly customized. It depends on the individuals that hire you and what they consider important. Some people hire based on your track record. You know, they don't care about your qualifications. They don't care about what you're like as a person. All they know is that you were the person that was the director of marketing that allowed that competitor of theirs to grow from nothing to be the position of number 2 in terms of market share in your local market, your region or whatever. So they don't care about anything other than the fact that you produce that result. Other people, it's, like sort of large enterprise. Then it's almost like you're hiring a politician. They want someone who looks good on paper, that is going to be very good looking, very professional. They'll be the public face of the company, so they care about that sort of appearances and how eloquent of a speaker you are and how diplomatic you are and how sensitive you are to public relations concerns, things like this. Completely different criteria to measure up to. So it depends what you're dealing with there. It's highly customized. Other times people hire directors because you have the same values and you have the same personality as they do, right? They hire in their own image, right? I believe that business should be run this way. I believe that these are the order of priorities. I believe in this way of treating employees. I believe in these ethics when making money. And I'm looking for a person that reflects all of that, right? So if you're just like me in all those regards, I'm going to think very highly of you and I'm going to recommend you for the position. It really depends. We see all of these and more, okay, when you get to that level. Okay, it's highly personalized and customized. Lion, that rings a bell. I think you've been here before. I had an interview with a manager in the same level where I'm looking for a job. He checked my resume and said, sometimes it's necessary to start from the bottom, I guess is what you're trying to say. How to respond without closing the door. Well, this reminds me of an earlier comment somebody made like half an hour ago. That was Courtney too, I think, that said something similar where she was in an interview and the interviewer said to her, well, your CV is weak or something. They'll throw out these statements. Sometimes they're blatantly false. Other times they're arguable, right? Like a statement like that. Sometimes you just got to start from the bottom. Yeah, I suppose sometimes you do, but often you don't, right? If you spent 15 years in one industry and you're going into a different industry or something, you're changing careers. Do you have to start at the bottom? Sometimes yes, usually no. Are you not more qualified than somebody coming right out of school? Of course you are. You've got 15 years of experience, following instructions, collaborating with people, meeting deadlines, overcoming challenges, communicating in many different ways on many different levels to many different people. Of course you're more experienced. Of course you have more value. This is someone that doesn't have that won't be able to do those things nearly as well, right? So usually it's false. You don't have to start at the bottom. But in some situations, yes. Now I can't speak to whether that's valid here or not. I don't know what the deal is, but a lot of times they'll just say this stuff. And what it is, it's two things. Like I was saying earlier, either it's to get a rise out of you, to gauge your reaction to a sort of abrupt statement or an unexpected statement or a blatantly false statement. It's just to see, how this person responds. It could be a test of communication skills. It could be a test of many different things. Alternatively, it can be a very unsophisticated form of question where it's your cue to basically contradict them. It's your cue to answer this assertion that you have to start at the bottom. So that would be your cue to say, well, I don't think that's really necessary. I have this, I have these skills, I have this experience, I have these accomplishments that show that I can certainly handle stuff far and above at the entry level. Things like this. So it's your cue to sort of challenge that. And in so doing, you are selling yourself. You're making a case for yourself. Okay. I don't like it when people, if that is what they're going for, I don't like it when people phrase it like that. I'm going to give you a false statement and just, here's the statement. No invitation to challenge it. No qualification. Just, I'm saying it like it's a fact. It's a very unsophisticated form of communication. It comes across very rude. And the evidence for this is that if you look at how people negotiate at high level and things like this, they don't do this, okay? Because it's not very sophisticated and it's kind of borderline unprofessional. Actually, I'd say it is unprofessional. It's not borderline unprofessional, it's just unprofessional. In HR, because they're in a position of great privilege, they think that they can talk to people like this and it's okay. Simply because there are no consequences when they do, right? If you had a candidate that got noticeably irate and insulted them as a response, you can be sure that they would stop doing this. But because most candidates, they're in a position of disadvantage, they have to go cap in hand, they have to get down on their knees and beg for a job from these people. These people, they play up to that. And so they don't treat people as professionally or as politely as you normally would. And they don't feel a lot of consequences of doing that. It's just the way the situation is. So I don't like it when people do this. And then I get questions saying, well, how do I respond to it? It's like, well, what you want to do is tell them to piss off, when they talk to you like this, because it's very rude, right? But if they're not trying to be rude and they're genuinely just that bad at being able to ask you a question to get you to make a case for yourself, then that's what the intention is. You then have to sort of sell yourself by explaining why it's not appropriate for you to start at the bottom, because you have this, and this, right? You've proven this, you've shown this, you've been commended for this, you've demonstrated that. These are not entry-level skills that you pick up at the bottom. This is stuff that you demonstrate up here. And for that reason, it's not really suitable for me to have to, or required for me to have to start at the bottom. Now, if you're going for an entry-level job, maybe you just disqualified yourself if you say something like that. I mean, it depends on the context. Alexander says, hello, I would just like to thank you for your tips. I'm in the recruiting process right now and I'm doing great. Well, congratulations, Alexander. It's good to hear. SP says, no, I mean for a candidate who has the relevant experience. SP, now what was the last thing you said? They have a screening call with an external agency. Okay, this was a screening call, and they are a recruiter. They are a recruiter. Okay. Hopefully you got an answer for your question there, SP. Courtney 2 says, sorry, Bill, something happens when YouTube for posting comments. Yeah, people have complained about that. I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure if they put filters on or something I haven't figured out is that when you go to the chat, in the chat box at the very top, it says, do you want, I can't remember, there's two options. Do you want top comments or do you want all comments? Or I don't understand. I'm going with the feed that Streamlabs OBS gives me, which I think is everything, but people have complained that their comments are getting filtered out occasionally. So I'm not sure what's going on there. The only thing I could think of is maybe there's some questionable wording that it filters it out based on the wording. I don't know. So just try and write, as benignly as possible, just to give yourself every chance. But people have complained. It might be very buggy. I'm not sure. But I apologize that your experiences with my live streams is a little bit frustrating. Alphonse says, facilities director in a healthcare institution in the US. I have an engineering background, 15 years experience. Okay, so Alphonse, now you were asking about the third and final director position. Okay. I'm surprised that they, like facilities director, is that like sort of like a maintenance manager kind of thing? Like you take care of the, property, plant, and equipment. Is that kind of the idea? In which case I understand the engineering background. That has a certain logic to it. But once again, I mean, engineering 15, I'm not in healthcare, so I mean, I'm sure I'm out to lunch here, but I was just thinking for myself, like if I was hiring for someone who is going to be a facilities manager in a hospital or a healthcare institution, would you get someone with an engineering background? I don't know. Obviously you would, if that's what's happening. So great. That's working out good for you. But no, I have no particular recommendations in your specific situation. Just knowing this much, is not enough to really go on. Just all I can give is sort of, in this case, is the general advice, which is, people usually hire the person that they like the most. What does that involve? It involves all the superficial stuff, having a good time interacting with you. When you leave at the end of the interview, they feel like, oh, I really enjoyed that. I'd have liked to have talked to that person more. That's a great thing. But beyond that, if you sort of agree with their general approach, their values, stuff like that, that really helps. With these type of situations. If you've encountered similar challenges, like, for example, if you're a facilities manager, there could be different challenges depending on what they envision for that role. Maybe the biggest challenge going forward is going to be expansion, right? Instead, maybe the challenge ahead is how to best economize on, sort of cutting costs for maintaining your physical assets. Alternatively, maybe the challenge ahead is modernizing the assets that you have. Maybe they're energy inefficient and you have to bring in a lot of green technologies or, stuff like that. Like, so I mean, there could be different challenges ahead for the role and what they envision that the incumbent will be dealing with. So if you have a background or you have a vision that kind of jives with theirs on what that challenge would be, that would be something that, would be important, right? So I mean, these could all be factors here. Lion says, in this case, it's because he has the same type of position level I applied for. Okay, now Lion. Okay, I had an interview with the manager at the same level. Okay. Starting from the bottom. Okay, so that was Lion. In this case, it's because he has the same type of position level I applied for. Maybe he is jealous or afraid of losing the position. Yeah, that's a tough one. When, there's political things going on, right? The person that is hiring, it's basically power politics. If anyone has studied organizational theory, which is a component of management, which incidentally is covered in my course there, this one, the $100 MBA course. That's where you study these things, right? That's where you realize all the different issues that could come in, right? And it manifests itself as people don't want to hire people that are more capable than they are, because it'll make them look bad, things like this, right? You get all these strange, unintuitive things going on. And it's hard to deal with it when you know what the problem is. Oftentimes, you don't even know that this problem exists. You don't even know that this thing is going on behind the scenes, right? So look, you have no control over that kind of stuff. Just try and give an honest answer. If this person is going to be the boss of this job you're applying for, remember that you need to be able to get along with them really well. They need to feel that you respect them, that you look up to them, that you will comply with their wishes. You're just very agreeable, very friendly, and you guys click, and you're not a threat of any kind, right? I mean, that's the kind of crap games that they play in a lot of large organizations, all this, power politics, office politics. So, I mean, but that's kind of, to me, that's kind of self-evident. Beyond that, there's no use worrying about it because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, nor even if you did, your options are very limited. God, I can't speak today. But your options are very limited anyway. So don't worry about it. Don't second guess yourself. Just try to be as likable as you can. Try to make the best possible case for yourself. Don't feel that you have to sell yourself short because you don't want to look too good because you're worried about now this person might consider you a threat for their own job. Like, if it were me, I would just not worry about any of that. Just make the best possible case for yourself. Try to come across as non-threatening and very likable. And that's all you can do. Don't overthink it beyond that. Any position you're up for, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. And nor should you be able to anticipate that and plan for it. Some things are just meant to work out, some things aren't. I know that sounds very unsophisticated, but it's true. It's a numbers game. It's exactly like sales. When they talk about sales, if you ever been a sales manager or observed a sales manager do their job, where they work with the sales people, the sales teams, it's all about numbers. It's all about percentages. It's all about, probabilities of making a sale and the average, volume of sales and the average, dollar amount of sales. It's not about certainties. It's an exact strategies. It's about, well, we made this change and, our percentage, our sales numbers, they went up by 2%. This kind of thing, right? It's exactly the same situation here, okay? You can easily overthink individual cases. Don't waste your time on that. Take your best shot, do everything you possibly can, and then once it's done, just move on, okay? And sometimes it's good to get a job where you're not walking into a situation. You know what I mean? If you've sort of successfully navigated this very delicate political situation to get the job, then you got to deal with having come into like this situation. There's a lot of history. There's rivalries. There's all kinds of things that you've just walked into. And that can be an impossible situation too. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that if there is all kinds of weird games going on behind the scenes, maybe it's a blessing in disguise if it doesn't work out. So think of it that way, okay? If you have to play those games to get in, it might not be a game worth playing. To me, that sort of reeks of large organization culture. That's where you usually see a lot of this stuff. Very processed, focused people that are just intensely focused on appearances and perceptions and not any substance behind it. Now, that's fine for some people. They're okay in that environment. People like me and a lot of other people, it's not an environment in which we thrive. We care more about substance rather than appearance. I mean, you can tell that by looking at my hairdo today. I'm desperately overdue for a haircut. And my attitude was, I don't care. Not the usual attitude of a CEO. I mean, in my case, I'm a former CEO. I'm never being a CEO again, so that's okay. Anyway, Enrique Riviera says, hello, Bill. So I recently had an interview where I believe my nerves got the best of me. Hey, you're not the only one that's happened to. A lot of times, you're normal, okay, for having someone get on your nerves and being provoked. And, a normal human being reacts like that, considering some of the stimuli that you get put through. Aside from practice, how can I manage my nerves or avoid impulsive answers? Thanks. Listen, there is a limit to what you can do to curb your natural tendencies. I'm speaking from experience here. One of the skills I've had to have as an executive is you really, I mean, you have to take self-control to a whole new level, okay? And being an engineer type, being an introvert type, I was never a salesperson, I was never a people person, I was never a politician. So, and I was never a lawyer. So, I mean, I don't have skills like some others do in that department. So there's a limit. You can push yourself only so far. But the answer is practice, okay? Something I recommend a lot on this channel, like a lot of you guys will probably have heard me say, is to do mock interviews, to grab a friend or family member and just say, can you give me a hand and can you ask me some questions? Pretend you're a job interviewer. We're going to do a pretend job interview. You're the interviewer. Ask me some questions and, you know, it'll be good practice for me, right? Now, if you have a friend or family member, you can also get them and say, like, look, can you, like, imagine you're more of a rude or unprofessional or hostile interviewer, you know? Ask me some questions of that nature if you can. And I'd like to be able to try and prepare myself for encountering those kinds of questions and perhaps that kind of treatment, maybe some body language that's off. You know, I've encountered that in the past. I want to get better at, you know, sort of, you know, handling it well. So can we do some of that? You know, that it is possible to do this. And practice makes perfect. You do enough of that. Like you do that every day for like 2 weeks or something. And you'll find that you'll be a lot more prepared when you go to an interview and somebody says something like borderline insulting to you. You know, what makes you think you're qualified to work here? You know, or like, I don't see a lot of accomplishments on your resume. You know, like whatever silly comments they might make. You know, maybe in a past life, that might have gotten under your skin. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I've got 25 years of experience with accomplishments all laid out. You know, there are accomplishments there. Don't tell me I don't have, you know, you sort of handle it better, right? Okay, practice makes perfect. If this is a real concern for you, that's what I'd recommend. Julia, is it right to judge the whole company by its recruiter? If he's inadequate, then the whole company is too. No. Well, I mean, look, you can, who am I to tell you, like, you know, you can judge this person, but not this person. You can judge whoever the hell you want. You know, like everybody's going to form their own opinions about what, you know, they're exposed to. Doesn't matter whether we want to or not, we're going to do it. And, you know, I would say yes. I mean, look, I've observed bad recruiters that are the gatekeepers for a good job. And the reality is that once you get past the recruiter, you never see that person ever again. Okay? So I've observed that, right? I also have observed, and I've been involved with, the hiring of external recruitment and selection companies, like HR companies, to do recruiting for you. And I've seen them do a good job, and I've seen them do a really crappy job too. So it's like in a way, they're the representative of the organization. They posted the job, they did the initial screening of the candidates, and it's all to work at this company. Like they're a contractor, but they're doing it all to work at this company. And the contractor, in some cases, just does a really crappy job. They're very unprofessional. They're incompetent. They charge way too much money for what service they actually provide. You know, and it's a shame if a candidate thinks like, oh, this person is representing that job, then forget it. It's a deal breaker. Because you haven't even interacted with people that actually work for that company yet, right? I've observed that also. However, you raise a good point, because is it okay that recruiters like are the level of unprofessionalism and ill and having poor manners that they do? No, that's not okay. You're not allowed to treat anybody like that in any other area of the business. So why is it okay to treat job applicants like that? You know, it isn't okay. It's just that they can get away with it. So they do. And it encourages them hiring people with less and less, you know, interpersonal skills and ability to treat people professionally. You know, it's tolerated because they're getting away with it. So in that sense, I would say yes. If you want to hire these idiots to like represent you, I mean, you get what you get, you get very poor quality candidates or people that, they're borderline psychopaths. They don't care when people are rude to them. They don't get upset. They just, nothing affects them. And they disengage so much that they're bad employees. So it's an interesting question. You're going to form your opinions based on your experiences, and no one can affect that. But there should be consequences for organizations that employ unprofessional and borderline, not borderline rude recruiters that turn off and drive away great candidates. I have to start winding this down in about 5 minutes, so I'm going to go through these questions here. SP, what recommendations do you have for a person who wants to switch industry? I've done an entire video on that. The bottom line is networking, okay? If you go through recruiters, what do recruiters care about? They care about years of experience doing whatever, years of experience. That's their number one metric. So if you're changing industries, by definition, you'll have 0 years of experience in the industry you're going to. And that is a deal breaker for them. Their response will be, well, then how can you possibly think you're qualified to do this, right? So it's very easy to solve that problem. You don't go through recruiters. You get a job through networking, okay? You proactively contact hiring managers and executives. That solves that problem, okay? I've trained many students in how to do this, and it's worked for them. And I've used it myself to build a business. And I go into great detail on precisely how in that course. There's also some free videos I have on my YouTube channel that go into more of the specifics of how to do that. Alphonse says, thanks for your answer for my initial question. What I needed advice on is ideas on what to expect in a final interview at this level. I'll be meeting senior executives of the organization. Senior executives care more about your attitude, your approach, your values, and your track record. That's what they care about. They care less about qualifications, about technicalities, about specific skills. The higher you go, the more your interpersonal skills take over your job. More and more of your job is spent dealing with people. Less and less of it is spent on technical matters. Okay, so they care supremely about your interpersonal skills. So, that's what's important. One job I did that I got with the owner of a company. He wasn't the CEO of the company, he was the owner. And, we did like some job interviews or something. And then I met him in like the final one or whatever. And then he basically said, he called me up and said like, this was like a week later or something. I'd like to talk to you, like come down. And my first thing I said was like, what, now? And he's like, yeah, now. Right. What the thing was, is what he was maybe getting at was like, if you are indeed dedicated to this, you should be able to drop everything now and pursue this, because I'm about to give you a job offer. That's what's coming next. But I just want to make sure that you're committed here. If I had said something like, well, it's not convenient now, maybe, how is Tuesday at 2, or if you can't do that, Thursday at 5, then that might have jeopardized it, right? But they're looking for that commitment. I know this is a small thing. That's the very small ask of anyone, especially in this context. But, they're looking for that. They're looking for do you click? I'm expecting to talk to you now. Let's talk now. It's like, I don't want to deal with a person that has to schedule me in, for next week. Let's just do this. So, I mean, that may or may not be relevant, but that was one of my experiences for getting a high level position there. Bill, are you religious at all? Well, that's not something I go into publicly. Enrique says, thanks, Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Enrique. Julia, thank you, Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Julia. Thank you to everybody here. There's 31 of you guys here. You guys are all awesome, and you're doing some self-improvement. And you keep doing self-improvement, you will be an absolute pro, before this is all over. So that's good. Last question before I have to sign off. Hi, Bill. This is from Bree, or Bri. Bree says, hi, Bill. I finished an initial phone interview for a job that I really want, using the tips from your channel. Thanks so much for the content and fingers crossed. Yeah, well, best of luck, Bree. And I'm glad you find stuff useful. Hopefully it turns out to be useful in your specific situation with this position. So thanks, everybody. You guys are awesome. I will be back next week with more live streams for the various topics. I have the one on side hustles and entrepreneurship called Side Hustle Ideas. If you are interested in that, check that out. I have the one where I break out the results of all the polls that I send out every day on my YouTube channel. A lot of subscribers vote on the polls. We got thousands of votes for these things. You can find out what you guys are saying. And we discuss some of the concepts involved. And then, of course, there's the general Q&A, weekly Q&A. I might be doing 2 of these a week in future instead of just 1. So, because I enjoy doing them, actually, and I have some free time here and there, so I might do more of these. But I'll be back next week with some more of the general Q&A like we just did. Thanks so much. You guys are awesome. Take care. I'll see you soon, and I wish you absolute best going forward. Take care.